All right, I click the go live button. All right, it says that we are live for the March 2020 Westlake Charter School Board meeting. We got these cool microphones right here. Ooh, shout out to Bill Selleck. And let's hand the floor over to our board president, Golick. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's weird. I don't have to do the whole telephonic thing
Right.
with this meeting tonight. But I will go ahead and give a shout out reminder to the fact that you can make comments via email still this evening at admin@westlakecharter.com. We have the same rules as before, though. Try to keep it to 250 words and put the matter which you want to comment on in the subject line. But we'll be checking that throughout the night, and we'll be taking any public comment that we have here in person. With that, Amy, will you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Yes.
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Josh?
Here.
Jamie?
Here.
Michelle? Lila?
Here.
Shannon? And Jay.
Perfect. I think that brings us to some celebrations.
Whoop, whoop.
Who wants to go first?
I'll kick it off.
Yeah.
I am celebrating. It is conference week, and conference week is a lot of work, and it is also a really, really great opportunity to connect with families. And it's exhausting, but it's so fulfilling to connect with families and talk about kids and seeing parents and kids interact and to be part of that and just the pride and the celebration. It's just a great, fantastic thing that we do this round of conferences at this point in the year.
Yeah. I love the second round of
great.
conferences. Is it cool? It's a cool piece. You want to just whip around from there?
Sure, yeah. Janie.
I want to celebrate. I actually was going to celebrate conferences, but thanks, Lila. No. I also, I think, I don't know if I celebrated this last time, but I just love spring on our campus, and they just put out the umbrellas, which, I have like prime viewing of the tables out there, and it's just so lovely to see kids out there, sometimes eating, but mostly just working in different groups and all different middle schoolers out there. So I just really enjoy our spaces, our learning spaces, and I appreciate the new umbrellas out there. So
As the trees start to bloom.
Yep.
It's the spring on our campus, yeah.
Josh?
Well, I'm going to celebrate that we're back.
Yeah.
That we're all here. That's it.
That's
I'm
it?
happy to be back.
Yeah. AW, you want to play?
Yeah, I think we can't do this meeting without celebrating Jessica Block.
Hey, for sure.
Is our tech TOSA, and I went to her last Wednesday and said, this is what we need to do based on a picture that John has on his whiteboard. And I said, you tell me what I need to order, and I'll order it. And she literally took the ball, and here we are tonight having a very successful meeting. So thank you to Jessica Block for making us look good.
Yeah, absolutely. The microphones, all of it, wouldn't have happened without Jessica Block. Such a shout out.
Really nervous when he gave me his picture of the
It made sense on the whiteboard.
We use the whiteboard a lot. We can celebrate it for the impact committee. We still, cherish our big whiteboard planning. I want to celebrate moving forward. This is a piece of that. Regardless of how you feel about masks, hearing about masks and how those changes are coming, and seeing different pieces come back to being together and in person. I just want to celebrate that our community is starting, I think, to maybe feel more connected. And I spent the day in the office with all my coworkers for the first time in 2 years today. And so we're just starting to be able to connect in different ways. And I'm not going to hide, it's tiring, right? Like you maybe sit back and wonder, and teachers, I'm sorry, I know you've felt this all year already, but in my little world, right, it's new to be all together, and then to think that we did this every day and didn't think anything of it. So I'm just excited that we are, keep moving forward. I now need to go watch, which Disney movie is it? Oh no, I'm not going to remember.
Encanto?
No, not Encanto.
No.
I'm avoiding Encanto.
Oh, it's a good movie.
Megan keeps singing it. I just can't.
Obi-Wan?
Bruno. No, with Tom Selleck is one of the voices, and he's
Toy Story?
No, and he's in a
that's Tom
orphanage, and he builds a time machine so he can go. No. Okay, I'll look it up during the meeting and make sure you all go watch it. It's your homework. I cry every single time. Anyway, Sean, you go.
I will go back to conferences, but more specifically, I got to do it a little bit differently because my kiddo's advisor is on maternity leave. So I got to actually have our meeting with Mrs. Kayau, which was neat because we've never had her as a teacher, and she's the principal, so it was kind of extra special. So that was really neat that that James got to do that.
Love it. Hey, if I could celebrate, I would celebrate eye contact. And here's what I mean by that. We are in a room together, and I've been making eye contact with you as a board on my screen for 2 years, but really I'm not making eye contact. I'm just staring at the camera, so you think I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at the camera. But now when I'm looking at you, I'm really looking at you, and this feels awesome. So, yep, we're all masked still. For those of you on the YouTube landia, hey, we still have a mask order because it's not midnight on the 11th yet, because today is the 10th of March. And things are shifting, but it's great to see everyone here in this room in person and making real, IRL, in real life eye contact.
It is completely different. We talked about that a little bit in governance. How being in the same room with somebody is vastly different than being on the YouTubes. And by the way, everyone, it's Meet the Robinsons. So everyone.
Oh, yeah. That's a great movie.
It's
It's got a dinosaur in it.
I just want to say that 3 people in this room adopted some of my fur-coated puppy fosters, which is kind of cool too.
There you go.
what about those of us that adopted your cat foster?
I had 2. I've got a cat and a dog.
Oh yeah, Janie's
For Mimi.
overachiever.
A long agenda tonight.
John loves it when we start talking about animals. Right? Any other board comments at this point? Seeing none. Do we have any public comments?
Let me check. I mean, we could look out to the public.
Amber, do you have a public comment? She might in just a few minutes, depending on how quickly we jump to her report.
I don't see any in the email.
Okay. So we are to Amber's report, John. Now, so people can hear her. Does she need to borrow one of?
Yeah, Steve, could you put your microphone maybe over on the podium, and then Miss Husted can use the podium?
Oh.
I said this there just for you. I really wanted you to stand at the podium. I thought it'd be so cool.
Hello.
Oh, I want to take a picture.
I got a picture of all of you earlier too. I'm excited. This is fun. So
Yeah.
I mean, first I want to celebrate having parents back on campus this week. It was really awesome just to have those small interactions in the morning. We've also,
Now you can be on YouTube.
I know, I was liking maybe that they couldn't see me. Now I see myself. So it's been awesome to see parents back on campus walking their students to class. In some cases, it was their first time walking their students to the classroom. So that's been just really exciting this week. We are still focusing on our staff appreciation, and so we got one really cool one for March. I've been trying to do one a month. The Sacramento Kings donated 150 tickets for our staff for March 20th, so we have staff getting some tickets for that event, and I think it'll be a fun way to celebrate our staff, and it's on a Sunday, so they'll have a nice afternoon out. And then WAVE is really shifting right now to just focusing on, we have 3 months left, and we're going to do 3 events, and we are going to connect our community, we're going to build community. We have an in-person coffee talk coming up next Tuesday that will be in the morning for the first time in over 2 years. And so we're excited to welcome some of our families who are coming on campus to drop off to come over and have some coffee and chat with us. So that is on Tuesday at 8:30. And so it looks like we will attempt an international festival because by far when we put a survey out, it was the most popular request. So that is now my focus, trying to get those events going. We're going to do a couple other fun community events, probably an outdoor game night and a science night. So those will be really laid back, really fun events, and then an international festival, and then work on building committees and all those types of things for next year. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We may be wanting a board booth at International Festival, Amber.
Oh, yeah.
So
We were
I'll
talking
be in
about that.
touch.
Thank you, Amy.
John, do you want to do the charter impact report?
Yeah,
Or
impact.
Lila can, I guess.
Lila, you want to do the
You wanna do
impact
it,
report
Lila?
with Shannon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Charter met our last meeting. We are working on putting together some metrics that would be available to the board to just have some conversations about equity and just to guide some of our conversations on that. We worked on kind of narrowing down what that might entail, kind of simplifying some of our plans truthfully so it's manageable, and so we have really, really good stuff going in, so we have really good conversations coming out, and just thinking ahead also to the timeline based on what our goals are.
Perfect. Thank you. Josh, development.
Yeah, thank you. So we're continuing to, you know, tailor our presentation to businesses for the Museum of Tolerance. Sean, myself, and one of our committee members, Nirali, took a grant writing class, which led us to a lead on some potential grants. So we're getting our feet wet there. With a little help from Steve, we've got a cheat sheet that'll help us out, and Steve got us set up on a couple of things. So we're looking to move forward on that and see what we can do on that. And hopefully, once we really get it going, you know, as we're looking through it, if we see grants that, you know, could benefit other committees, you know, we can present them to you guys, help you walk through it, you know, things like that. But in the meantime, we're going to start with one and build out from there.
Perfect. Sean in finance.
So finance is on tonight's agenda for so everything that we did is on tonight. So we've got second interim, and we've got the culmination of our certificated compensation review, and we even had a closed session, and we're having a closed session tonight. So literally, it's the same.
I just did a member count.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Same. We're fine, right? Yeah, okay, we'll get there when we get there. Governance met tonight. Let's see. So you'll see the first piece of what we did in regards on consent to the changes to the public records request policy. It was really just cleanup, nothing legally required there, just making sure that, for instance, it lists this address and not Pebblewood. And then we also really dove into succession and expansion planning for the board. That sounds like it will be the main work of governance over the next, certainly the next months and then the next year. Looking at our bylaws, making sure they fit us, looking at, is there a way to create a more transparent process for onboarding to committees and to the board? What ways can we outreach people? For example, a booth at the International Festival so people can see our faces and learn in a easier way what we do, because sometimes I know board work can be scary, and so just take some of that out of it. But more to come from governance. John, the executive director report.
Oh, is it me already? Well, here we go. Hi, everybody. It's pretty exciting to think we're gonna do a presentation up on the slideshow in the library here. This is super cool. Let's get a slide going here. I probably got a few celebrations. I can see them on the YouTubes. Can you guys see them on your Chromebook screens? Okay, great, great. Well, all right. Welcome to the board meeting, March 22. Let's just do this. Things to celebrate. Obviously, lots happening on campus right now. The 8th grade spoken word was just absolutely phenomenal. The students performed outdoors in the outdoor stage, and you can see them all up there. They did a great job. We've been celebrating this since it happened, but the high school winter formal was just gorgeous. Shout out to Abby Grimaldi and the whole team that put that together. I mean, it looked more like a wedding than a high school dance. It was gorgeous, just put together well. The kids appreciated it, and they've been talking about it ever since. And then that's followed up by the middle school dance, which was expertly put together by our incredible WAVE family members. I know Mrs. Husted was out there. But also, I saw first grade teachers out there putting this thing together. Like, what a community collaboration for both these dances between family members, staff members. It was really a lot of fun. These pictures don't do it justice, because I don't think we got pictures of literally family members, I think, tearing up, like being like, this is awesome, we're having a dance. It just felt so good to bring everybody back together again. And speaking of bringing people back, we're starting to have parents on campus, starting to have community members starting to pitch in. This high school planting revolution elective is really cool. They have an indoor garden growing in Dr. Galloway's classroom right now under these LED sodium lights. Chef Raveen Patel came out to like explore culinary skills with the kids, but it's really like this farm to fork, planting a revolution kind of deal, and the kids are into it. I was in there, I guess it was last week, and they were talking about where water comes from. Which, you think, oh, it comes to the sky. Well, I don't know if you're farming, water sources matter, and they're mapping it out. It was just fascinating to watch the students start to process, like, where does food come from? Because I think they all said, we want a vending machine. They thought the food came from a vending machine. Now they're learning where the food actually comes from, and it's a really cool elective. I could see this elective really blowing up at the high school, and it's great to have experts like Raveen Patel coming on campus. This 8th grade shadow day was awesome. So every one of our 110 8th graders gets on a set of vans, travels back and forth between the 8th grade, between our Mabry campus and our high school campus. And the 8th graders got a chance to shadow the 9th graders. They had 34 9th graders who played some form of leadership role in this day. And the kids got an opportunity to see what high school would look like. And it was a huge, huge success. You can see on the screen there little personal kind of greeting cards that were given to each 8th grader as they came over. Such a cool piece. And I want to celebrate our incredible high school counselor. She put together this virtual 4-year planning night for our freshman parent night. It was really well attended by freshman parents. Miss Dodwood is, she's only her first year with us, but it's just a phenomenal resource for our school and put on this night expertly. I think you would have watched it and thought, hey, this person's been doing this for 20 years. Like she's really got a knack for explaining complex 4-year planning, to freshman parents. It went really, really well. That was great stuff. And of course, we can't get out of tonight's celebration without talking about soccer and boys volleyball. Girls soccer, boys volleyball are taking place right now, and it is a ton of fun. The kids are doing a great job. What was the final score tonight, Mr. Corbink, on the girls soccer game?
Final is 5-1.
5-1. Explorers. I love it. And we were playing against a local team, against Leroy Green tonight. Super fun to play against a local team. Love it. I'm going to dive into my presentation. I usually start with strategic actions, then updates. But I'm going to give you a March to March to March. It is our March board meeting. And I'm going to take you back to March of 2020. So March of 2020, on the 6th of March, we had a staff roundup in this room. Hey, everybody, don't worry. There's this little thing called COVID happening. Not sure where this is going, but just want you to be aware. We'd never heard of masks. I don't even know if we were washing our hands back then. It was just like, we were just like, hey, there's this thing going on. We'll keep our eyes on it. Then Elk Grove closes the next day. Then we get together with Natoma's Charter School, NP3, and NUSD. It's the first time the leaders we all get together and go, I think something's up here. On the 12th, school closes, and I stand in this library for the last time I was here in 2 years was the 12th of March, 2020, when we said, hey, we're going to shut down, but don't worry. We think we'll be back on March 17th, 2020. We just barely missed it. Anticipate a reopen date. Wow. That's your March of 2020. Fast forward to March of 2021. Back to normal, right? It's March 3rd, and the people in this room, you are volunteering at the COVID shot clinic in the Natomas High School parking lot, right? So a year later, we get the vaccines coming out, and do you remember that? It seems strange that it was a year ago that we're like, a vaccine, right? March 7th, staff are returning to campus for the first time. Some staff have been working from home until almost this day. Imagine where we are right now. We've been in school all year. It was this time last year when some people were just stepping back onto campus. Kindergarten through 2nd grade reopens in baseline. Remember, 2 days a week, half day, right? Of course, the day after that, the CDC comes out and goes, oh, by the way, you don't need to do 6 feet of social distancing anymore. We're going with 3 feet. And we were right in the middle of our relaunch. We're like, Great timing. Thanks, CDC. Right? And then we reopened the 3-8. And then by the end of the month, we're preparing for increased capacity at 4 days a week. I mean, if you're exhausted by the word March, this is why. Look at just the March to March, the number of changes that transpired within the 31 days of March. So here we are in this March. It's March of 2021 or 22. What year is that? I don't know. And here we are on March 7th. We're welcoming families back on campus for the first time in 2 years. A year ago today, some staff members are coming on campus for the first time in a year. And a year later, families are coming back. If you're not exhausted by this story, like it's been a wild ride. Tonight, March 10th, is our first in-person WAVE meeting, an in-person board meeting in 2 years. That's a great celebration. And then on March 14th, the California Department of Public Health, Sacramento County Public Health Department, Natomas Unified School District, and Westlake Charter School are shifting from required masking to strongly recommending masking. It's a really interesting March to March to March story. I thought I would just drop that out there, partly a little tongue-in-cheek, because Steve and I were looking at slides going, oh my goodness, it has been a wild ride, but I feel like we're coming out of it. You can see each March has gotten a little bit better, so I can't wait till next March, because it's going to be awesome. Let's dive into some strategic actions. Let's talk health and safety. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We've updated our guidebook and we communicated clearly with families about what's going on. The handbook update, which is posted right now, includes the March 7th on-campus updates, which I'll walk through, and includes the March 14th masking updates, which I alluded to on the last slide. Family communications have included, everything we could come up with, right? We sent out family surveys, staff surveys as well. Prior to February break, we sent a letter home to families, a special blog post, a video included in that blog post, all regarding the March 7th piece. We've done multiple Westlake Weekly postings regarding these changes, so we hope that our community is well informed about what's going on. Speaking first about the March 7th piece, which I know is 3 days past now, but I want to make sure the board's aware of what's going on. You can see on the right side of the screen the overwhelming response from family members regarding their belief that these initiatives that we're launching this week were good ideas to reconnect our community. The initiatives being on-campus arrival, dismissal, volunteering, and recess. And those are the pieces that we launched this week. On-campus arrival and dismissal. For 2 years, we've kept people at the gates for health and safety reasons, but in alignment with the California Department of Public Health and what's happening right now, we're like, okay, now's the time. I've seen some smiling faces on campus, and it's been awesome. We were a little fearful that maybe people were going to want to wander in the classroom, but people have been very respectful, saying, hey, we'll keep our distance, but let us know when we can go inside. It's been really nice having families on campus for arrival dismissal. I've seen a lot of smiling faces there. Amber Husted and the WAVE team are helping out building some on-campus, non-classroom-based volunteerism and seeing that ramp up. Everything from people volunteering to come in and do some art installations here, potentially in the library, so that's a non-classroom environment where kids wouldn't be, to the clothing closet or the outdoor lost and found. So lots of opportunities bubbling up in that area. And this grade level recess one, if you look at the survey results, is off the chart. Students have been doing activity time for the whole year, broken up into cohorts for contact tracing purposes, and now the kids get to play across their whole grade level, and it's super joyful, and everybody's excited about the opportunity. So that is the March 7th piece. And here comes the updated masking guidance, right? On March 12th, the California Department of Public Health says that we'll be shifting the masking guidelines for K-12 schools. It's really on March 11th at 11:59 p.m., which is ironic, right? Because we closed school on March 12th. I think it's, there's no surprise there that it all lines up because they're changing the rule on a Saturday, which is strange, but it's all right. So here's how the new masking guidelines play out. There's 4 levels of masking guidelines from the California Department of Public Health, and those have been adopted by Sacramento County Public Health. Level 1, required. We've been in a required guidance now for quite some time. When we move from required, we don't move from required to optional. That's not what's happening. We're moving from required to strongly recommended. Now, for us as a board, What's the difference between strongly recommended and required? They sound both pretty important to me. I think the difference is enforcement, right, and accountability. If something's required, I feel as the executive director, I would have to walk down the hall and say, hey, this is required. I need to hold you accountable to this. Now, what is my responsibility in the next level? I think my responsibility as an educator to continue to say, hey, this is strongly recommended, but it's not an enforcement piece where you would require it. After strongly recommended, it would be recommended, and after recommended, it would be optional. I think when we eventually do get to optional, I guess masking's always been optional, but we never really thought about it till now. So I guess for the rest of our life, this will always be an option as it is in other cultures and other countries. So I want to talk about how this is going to transpire here. So beginning Monday, March 14th, Natomas Unified School District, NP3, Natomas Charter School, and Westlake Charter School. So every school in Natomas will make this shift. We'll be aligning with the California Department of Public Health and the Sacramento County Public Health by shifting to strongly recommending mask usage. From required to strongly recommending. Now this is the kind of sprinkle a little Westlake piece on it, this next couple pieces. One is that masks will not be required anywhere on campus for anyone regardless of vaccination status, right? At one point we wondered, well, is it going to be based on vaccination status? And it is not. But this part's genuinely us. The Westlake Charter School community will be supportive and respectful to those who continue wearing a mask and to those who make the decision to stop wearing a mask. This is a really big deal. This is the piece, friends. Like, we talk about social emotional learning. We talk about self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, all these pieces. This is a very personal choice for people, and there will be no disrespect between students, colleagues, community members. We will make sure that this is done respectfully, regardless of what choice families make. Before I move on, these are the new guidelines. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns about the guidelines or any additions you'd like to make? Very good. I do, again, note that we're all masked tonight because as of right now, and as an employee, I don't have that choice to make yet. But I suppose as a non-employee, you could unmask today inside of the library, I think.
It's a school site, though.
Yeah, I know. We've kind of decided, like, is that true or not true? But next month, you'll get to make that choice.
Like, I didn't have to at work today because the OSHA rules changed, which means I didn't have to wear a mask. But once I came onto this
On
sacred
the
place,
school side,
I
yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
then the mask became required again until, unless I'm out here partying at midnight on Saturday, I should just keep it on.
Yeah, at 11:59, you walk into the library. I'll get you a key. Okay. Good. Okay, well, if there's any questions, thoughts, concerns on that, please let us know. I kind of thought maybe I should check the public comment, but maybe I'll give it a minute. Let's talk about the next strategic action, and is preparing for fall. Now, I know a lot of people, like Amber's like, I got the next 3 months. I got to do international festival. I got a lot going on. In my position, I get right around to March, and I'm like, ooh, it's October. Like I'm all the way out in fall, and we got a lot going on right now to prepare for fall, and I want the board to be aware of kind of the things we're working on. We are deep in the middle of budget development season. I know we're doing second interim tonight, but things that revolve around that is like staffing. How many staff members do you need? Look at your academic and social emotional referral data. How many staff members do you need? You need lots. How many can you afford? You can afford a little less than you always want. That's the way it works, right? You look at professional development. What are we doing in the fall? What's that going to cost? Do you want to send people to conferences? Do you want to do things in-house? You look at curriculum and supplies. We just got some new science curriculum in the middle school. There's these costs are all being projected out for next year. And this 10th grade expansion is a big deal for us right now. We're making these critical decisions for what does 10th grade look like next year. The big one for me is staffing, obviously, because we have 3 key leadership roles that we're filling right now. We have the K-8 principal, the director of student support services, and a brand new high school assistant principal, which we've notified the board, the community about these things via a letter. But we're going to talk about them a little bit tonight. This K-8 principal is really important to understand. The director of curriculum instruction is a position that we kind of married to the director of student support services for the last couple of years as we muddled through this crisis, and our amazing director of C&I became our principal, Jen Kayau. But I got to tell you, as we start to reemerge in the fall of 22, it is really time for us to get somebody back in the driver's seat whose sole job is to make sure kindergarten through 12th grade is aligned with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And that job is too big to place on one person, who's also in charge of student support services, which is the team that is, servicing like 1,700 referrals in the last 6 months. So having Mrs. Kaya'u move the director of C&I gig is really important for our school next year. We've got work to do, and she's the right person to do it at this critical time. So this K-8 principal will really be focusing on reconnecting our community. That's something I heard the board say last month, and it is really important that you look at the structures that we have at Westlake Charter School and you say, hey, you got a principal, an assistant principal, you got these directors of C&I and student support services. What are all these people doing? In our vision, the times that we've operated the best in our history as a school, we had these directors who had their eye on the ball for vertical alignment, and we had these principal positions who were boots on the ground. They know every student's story, every family's story, every teacher's story, every staff member's story, and they're able to be that connector. That's who we're looking for in our next principal, that's the type of skills we'll be looking for. Now, the interview process will include staff and families through surveys that we've already sent out. Hey, staff, hey, families, who you're looking for in the next principal, but also in the interview panel. We want family members, staff members, board members on that interview panel, so we have a very diverse panel looking for our next principal. Marketing's been really good. We've got over 1,000 little clicks on our landing page, which is great. But I got to tell you, this time 2 years ago, there were more people in the application pool. In fact, this time 2 years ago, there were far more people in the teacher application pool for our K-5, just regular like eligibility pool. The staffing market out there is legitimately different than it's been in the past. So I want everyone to understand that now. We're super lucky. I look at that principal pool, and there are some excellent candidates in there. The director as well. Like, there are some phenomenal candidates in there, and you only need one really good one, and so that's great. But like, the pools are thinner, and the marketing is more than we've ever done. I mean, that is far more marketing than we did last time with less applicants, and that's just really being seen across the entire state right now. It's kind of scary in education to see the staffing crisis the way it is right now. So I want you aware of that, but we do believe that we will be able to anticipate the announcement of our new leader by May 1st. We think this process is going to roll right through this next 5 weeks, and by the end of April, beginning of May, we would like to be introducing whoever our new K-8 principal is. Similarly, with the Director of Student Support Services, as Mrs. Ike kind of steps away, and congratulations to her, we're looking for similar leadership qualities to the ones that she brings. Looking through the surveys and the internal documents from people who are talking about that replacement, people are saying we're looking for a student advocate, a collaborator, somebody who's empowering others, somebody who's systems oriented. We are not looking for somebody to come in and reinvent this incredibly complex and powerful system that's already been built. We're looking for somebody to come in and manage these systems, right? Somebody who's going to partner with the admin team and manage current systems, not reinvent the wheel. We got a pretty good wheel here. Let's bring in somebody who's a collaborator and understands that they're here to work with the people in that department. Again, we think we're on track for May 1st on that one. And then the high school assistant principal, we think is probably up to 1 month behind that, maybe by June 1st. We're a year ahead of schedule. I mean, if you all recall, we were going to hire a vice principal in junior year, but we're doing it in sophomore year with some really good reasons. The leadership responsibilities for this person will really help assist with us building out the last couple years of the high school. Anything that an assistant principal could take off of Emily Batten's plate frees Emily Batten up to build out junior and senior year. We got big doings in junior and senior year with dual enrollment, embedded honors courses, college and career readiness. Bringing in this high school assistant principal is probably a really good move for us. We're going to allow internal and external candidates to apply. And we anticipate that by June 1st, we'll be announcing our new high school assistant principal, which is super exciting. So as we look ahead to the fall, I'm spitballing here a little bit, but I want you to know that we've got some focuses that we're starting to gel around. Obviously, this one around reconnecting our community, this is based on the board's conversation, but I think it's everyone's conversation right now. Like, we need to really focus on remembering who we are as a community, a school, a beacon for the center of this community where family members meet together, where we all collaborate, that we meet face to face. That's some important work. We're going to be partnering with our WAVE team, bringing our families on campus safely, and really focusing on building staff community again. I mean, we haven't been in a room like we used to, and that's going to take time to rebuild who we are. We're excited about that. This next piece is a big focus. It's onboarding these new leaders by really rooting them in the systems that exist. Again, you're not being hired as a new principal to come in and change anything. You are coming in to observe what's happening, become part of the systems that exist, and support the people within those systems. So we got a lot of work to do to coach them to operate within current systems, and then really focus on reconnecting our community, both internally, staff, students, and externally with our community as well. We're really specifically hiring all three positions based on leadership qualities, not discrete skills. I want to say that to our board just so it's a conversation we keep having. Like, we are looking for leaders. So the Director of Student Support Services, Christina Ike, has become an expert in the field of special education. I think we acknowledge that. She's been recognized at conferences as recently as this last month as really an expert in that field. But she wasn't an expert in that field 8 years ago. This place helped grow Christina Ike into the place she is. But who was she when she got that job? She had excellent leadership qualities. She knew how to collaborate. She understood shared leadership. She understood the power of empowering others. Those are the leadership skills we're looking for. The discrete skills then can be acquired through your tenure here, because we always can consult, right, for discrete skills. Last piece I want to talk about is academic and social emotional development through collaboration and transparent data analysis. I think our teachers need more access to data more regularly. When we were January of 2020, I was in a leadership meeting with teachers, and we thought we'd arrived somewhere. Benchmarks were in place. We felt like we finally had the data at our fingertips to make good academic decisions in these professional learning communities. That was January of 2020. We obviously hit a big pause for 2 years. But our staff need more transparent access to data to improve this team collaboration. That's one of the kind of like background goals that I'll be working on through the summer and the fall, to create these data avenues for our staff, and then for our impact team as well, and our board as well. So I'm really excited about that piece. I know we will focus on both academic and social emotional, but we can't do that work without developing those PLCs and giving them the data they need. I know it's a lot of me talking. Anybody have a thought, question, concern on any of the topics that I covered over there? Somebody say something, anything at all.
What's a PLC?
Thank you so much. It's a professional learning community, and what it means is we follow very specific structures to ask 3 critical questions as a team of learners. So we're all 6th grade humanities, and we go, what do we want our students to learn? How do we know they learned it? What do we do if they didn't learn it? It sounds super simple, but this simple 3 questions leads us down a pathway of very complex conversations. What do we want our students to learn? Analyzing the standards, determining what is really important for our kids to learn. How will we make sure they do it? Then how will we know they learned? Developing assessments that really tell us definitively, did they learn what we wanted them to learn? And then the critical question, what do we do if they didn't learn? Which leads us down this cycle of continuous improvement, saying that just because we gave the test doesn't mean we're done. It just means we're finding out who learned it, who didn't, and what do we do next. The PLC model is something we do a lightweight version of it now, but I think in January of 2020 we were all in on it, and then we hit pause. It's a good question. Thanks, Josh. All right. Thanks, team. Updates include my academic update. So should I check the email for any comments?
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, we can do it now. I was going to do it before consent anyway.
Okay. It's just this kind of I got a long thing coming, and I do have one right here I can see.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, comment for board meeting, consent agenda, health and safety plan.
We should save that until consent.
Okay, very good. Yeah, all right, good. I'll go back to my agenda. So let's do some updates here. Lottery was super successful. One of the most successful parts about it was the speed with which it transpired. It was only 45 minutes. So on the 7th, we held it, and by 5:45 p.m., in 45 minutes, it was done, which is amazing. Amy's laughing because you did half the amount.
45 minutes to set up.
Yeah. And, you had half the applications in 3 times the time. Yeah. So on that evening, all applicants received their email regarding the results of the lottery. So it went very, very smoothly. We had 1,480 applicants, all processed in 45 minutes. Thanks to the technology produced from the lottery system. And I love this. I don't know why it's so funny to me, but the total number of students on the wait list is 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't put a comma in there. It's 1,234 people on the wait list. 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy to remember. We started doing some analysis, about who's accepting, who's declining, but we'll bring you back some further analysis later on once we get out into the fall about number of free and reduced lunch applications, things like that. Any questions on the lottery? No? All right. I want to do my academic updates. I maybe go down the academic update rabbit hole a little bit, but, hang with me. I think it's really important that we start finding a cadence to come back to this conversation. We used to do it really well here in this boardroom. I think in the last 2 years, it's been a bit of we've been focusing on the crises at hand. I think now is an appropriate time to step back into this work. So, I'll start off with NWEA. We just finished up the NWEA testing in the winter. And I want to talk about this fall to winter conversation. You can see the histogram on the right-hand side of the screen there. And I'm going to talk about norm reference testing and how these curves depict percentile scoring. Let me walk through that. So NWEA is a norm reference exam. Norm reference versus criterion-based. Criterion-based exam is, hey, there's 5 discrete skills, and I think you should know all of them. If you got them all right, you get 100%. That's criterion-based testing. The old STAR exam, criterion-based. You could get 100% on the old STAR exam. Norm reference testing, actually, the NWA system adjusts what questions it gives you based on how you answer. So if you get 4 fourth grade questions correct right in a row, it sprinkles in a couple of 5th grade and 6th grade questions to be like, hey, how far can I push you? In fact, out of the 52 questions on the NWEA test, they want you to not be able to answer about 25% of them, which is why NWEA is a little frustrating as a student, if you're a student who likes to get things right, because you're like, I can't answer that. Exactly. We had to find your ceiling. So these norm reference exams are a little different than criterion exams. You get a scaled score. A scaled score is compared to a place on a normed curve, that curve right there. So if your scaled score scores in the 50th percentile, you're right here in the middle. That's a 50 right there if you couldn't see it. In the middle of that curve, that's the 50th percentile. That's what's considered average. This would be below average. This would be above average, right? And you can see these dotted lines represent standard deviation. So the norms that we're going to be talking about here are static. They were built based on a white paper that was written in 2019 and produced in 2020, right before the pandemic. So what they're saying is, hey, if you're a 4th grader, we've tested thousands of 4th graders in 2019. And if you're in their 21st week of instruction or your 37th week of instruction as a 10-year-old 4th grader and you score 450 points, that puts you right here on this curve. And that's how we get these norms. These norms are built based on how a child your age, who's been in the same amount of school as you, 21 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, scores on this test. Well, that was back in 2019. So I think everyone who's using NWEA right now is calling NWEA and saying, hey guys, I think your norms are a little off. And they're like, we know, but we can't adjust our norms because those are our norms. We're going to come out with a new norms report next year. And we're like, okay. So we're all comparing ourselves to a pre-pandemic state. So students who place in the 61st percentile on NWEA are predicted to be proficient or meet grade level benchmark on CASP. So let me say that again. NWEA has written a white paper that says, hey, any of your kids who score in the 61st percentile, those kids, we're pretty sure are going to be proficient on CASP. So you can see this line right here. This is the 61st percentile. So if I'm looking at this chart, I'm saying, hey, if my kid's in the 50th percentile, my student is as average, is good as at least 49, or better than 49% of the kids in the entire country, I'm average. But you have to be 11 points above average to meet the minimum level of proficiency on CASP, which kind of demonstrates the difference between the California assessment regimen and a nationally normed system. So California is a little more aggressive about its assessment regimen. You need to be performing well above average on a national norm test to meet the California assessment. I just think that's interesting. I kind of throw it out there. So one thing I want to tell you here is that, like, if you score in the 61st percentile in fall, it's different than if you score in the 60. It's different if you score the same score in winter. So if a student scores a 450 in the fall, look, maybe it placed them right there in the 61st percentile. You guys with me on that? That's the score in the fall. Now, in the winter, it's a different curve. So there's the new curve. The kid scores 450 again. He's not in the 61st percentile anymore because the norms change. I don't want to go too far down the norm reference rabbit hole, but I just want to like contextualize, like, this isn't like a criterion-based test. It's a little complex test, so it's one data point. We spend a lot of time talking about it. I just want to make sure we're kind of talking about it correctly. So it's very interesting when we look at this norm reference test. I'm going to tell you tonight what we do with this. We use this as a universal screener. We use this to look at everybody equally and say, okay, who's doing okay, who needs some re-engagement, and who needs some intervention. We never expect all 100% of our children to score above the 61st percentile. Statistically, it's just improbable that you're ever going to have everybody above average. Otherwise, you would have shifted the average. So each year, we see the scale scores grow from fall to winter. Hey, I got a 450. Now I got a 455. But we also see the percentiles drop every year from fall to winter. For whatever reason, the norms are super aggressive, and we just don't ever seem to keep up with it. Here's an example of what we looked like fall of 17, 8 to 18, fall of 18 to winter 19. We went down 1 point and 1 point in math. This year, we went down 3 points from fall to winter. Not a big difference in the drop, but it is a big difference in the number. Look at the number of students who met the 61st percentile or higher. We are now looking at 39%. I mean, I don't know that we've ever seen a 30 in that category, right? I don't want to alarm anybody. I believe this is 1 point of data, and I'm not even totally sure that this piece of data is appropriately normed to the current situation. However, we will know after CASP. Because while NWA will not and has not changed their norms, we already know that CASP has adjusted their expectations for this year. So it's plausible that we have 39% of our students in the 61st percentile, and we go out on CASP and we end up back where we typically are, which is, somewhere around 60% of our kids meeting proficiency. So we just won't know until we get there, but it's really important that we collect good data now on our way to the CASP exam. I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to go to the next slide. It's going to show you reading. So again, this is math. Reading, again, a 1 point drop 2 years ago, a 1 point drop the next year, and this year there's a 5 point drop. However, look at the actual numbers. It's interesting. Oh, my cursor's not up there. It's on my screen. We have 50% of our students in the 61st percentile, and in previous years it was 52 and 53. Strange, we didn't fall off that much in reading, but we did in math. Okay, good to look at, good to note. Can't wait to see what it looks like on CASP, but I do see, this fall to winter trend. Now I'm going to dive into, this is whole school data you're looking at. Another bullet point here is we're talking old K-8 to new K-9. Probably not that big of a deal, but like statistically, numerically, hey, you're talking about another 135 students. it does change the data. But these are whole school numbers. I'm going to take a look at the achievement gap, I think, on the next slide. I'm going to kind of talk through some of our achievement gap pieces because I think if we're going to talk about a new cadence for talking about academic performance, that every time we talk about whole school, we should break it down at least into looking at our achievement gap data so we can say to ourselves, hey, what are we doing about creating equitable outcomes, right? Then from there, I'll go into some of the intervention pieces that we're doing. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or concerns before I step forward? I feel like I talk a lot, but I don't think you can stop me. Just kidding. Good? All right. So let's take a look. This is NWEA winter data based on math. Now, let's take a look at the achievement gap here between African-American students in math in winter on NWEA and white students, because we typically do the African-American white achievement gap, although there are several different categories you could look at. This is the typical one to look at. And you have a 26-point gap. Now, nothing is good or bad unless compared to something else, and so we take a look and go, what does that mean? That seems significant to me. If you go back to our charter, the year that we authorized our charter, we included in our charter the achievement gap analysis from CASP that year. And what's interesting about that year is in 2019, the CASP achievement gap in math was 26 points, which is really fascinating how closely aligned they are. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's somewhat coincidental in my opinion, because I think CASP and NWA aren't so closely aligned, more so in math than in reading and ELA. But here's the big aha when I started doing the analysis. It's okay, 26 points, okay, whatever. But back then, we were talking about 35% meeting proficiency versus 20%, and 61% meeting proficiency versus 45%. Now again, NWEA versus CASP, it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm just putting numbers on a screen to say, hey, we should start creating data transparency to be looking at this regularly. And so I figure it's good for us to look at. Now, reading shows a similar pattern, but again, the big asterisk on the reading slide is NWEA only tests reading, and CASP tests English language arts, which includes reading, writing, grammar, right, and function. So again, let's look at the gap between African American and white students. It's a 28-point gap as opposed to a 26-point gap. And back on CASP in 2019, it was only an 18-point gap. I think it's interesting. I think we should dig a little deeper into NWEA fall to winter and compare it to CASP this spring and see what this gap is doing. But again, the big asterisk is 55% of our African American students were scoring proficient on CASP versus 32. Again, this is NWEA. So it'd be very interesting to look at those CASP scores this year and compare them and do the gap analysis again. So I bring that up because I hope you're okay with it. I think we should start coming to this board meeting and talking about this. This is in our charter. Our charter says that we will close the achievement gap. We've been open for 15 years. We haven't closed it. I think it's important that we acknowledge that and work toward it. So why are we even talking about NWEA? It's only one point of data. I would love to bring you benchmark data, grade distribution data. I think those are super relevant. And we're going to be building some transparent data systems going forward that'll help us. But for today, what we have is NWEA. If you take a look at this chart right here, kind of what it indicates is, as a universal screener, when I look at students in winter of 22, as they take the math exam, I said, okay, really, if you take average, and high, as a teacher, I look at those kids and I say, hey, those kids are making progress. They're within striking distance. I'll give a little extra re-engagement for the kids in the middle, and we're moving them right along. And I'm predicting they're probably going to get pretty close on CASP. Those kids are probably okay. That's 61% of my kids. That feels like 61%. But I've got two groups down here that I got a little work to do with. I'm going to talk about how teachers, in collaboration with our MTSS department, attack these groups down here. Same thing over here with reading. When you have 72% of your students that you're saying, okay, they're making progress, we're on the right track right there, but I still have 29% of my students who I need to address. What do we do with that? Well, NWA is a universal screener, and what I mean by that is our teachers get these little folders right here, and these inside the folders, these little printouts right here, and teachers are able to look into these data folders and see their own classroom data. And they use the data to understand student progress, and they re-engage our students in the topics to move them through the standards, but they also partner with MTSS. So if you think about that if you think about the outcomes that we just talked about, the two lowest groups, if I'm a teacher, I've got some high kids and some high average, and I got some average kids, and I've got two groups, 20% and 20% of my kids are below average and far below average, that's a stretch for me as a teacher to address all those needs. That's where the MTSS team comes in. I think the teacher's doing a great job of trying to re-engage kids, but intensive intervention happens through our MTSS team because the MTSS team addresses every single student who performs below the 21st percentile in a real rigorous process. They do digging deeper case management and assessment, really getting an understanding like this student is scored below the 20th percentile. Let's pull this student's record. Let's see where they're at. If they're typically in the 87th percentile and they come on the 13th percentile, you pull them in and go, were you just clicking? Yeah. Okay. You're but honestly, if we pull these kids and find out, hey, I'm your case manager, I'm going to do some SMART goal setting with you, and we're going to get you on path to work on those goals. This new SMART goal process is new this year. This team is now providing more intervention than ever before in the history of our school and doing it in a more intensive way, utilizing SMART goals. It is really something you would never see from the street view looking in. You don't know this is happening behind the scenes, but the work is phenomenal. They're targeting intervention for these kids, and I want to show you this slide. When I look at all math and reading for NWEA from fall to winter, every test, every score, all students, 65% of all students made what we would call progress on their scaled score. So the majority of students made progress. Now some didn't. They're, plus or minus 2 points, so we consider that flat or zero growth. And so, or even some kids go down. They have a really good testing day in the fall, they have a really bad testing day in the winter, and their scale score goes down. But 65% of all students go up from fall to winter this year. What you're going to see on the screen is that for those students who receive Waggle math intervention, 89% of them went up. For those students who received Math IA small group, 86% went up. Math 180, 82. And then in the reading area as well. Each one of the intervention groups outperformed the non-intervention groups in their ability to make growth on their scale score. So what does that tell us? It tells us that if a teacher has to differentiate in their classroom for 20% of their kids who are high, 20% of their kids that are average high, 20% of their kids are average, 20% below, and 20% far below, that's a lot for a teacher to cover in a school day. But if the MTSS team could take the lowest group and say, we're going to give you intensive intervention and this is going to be the outcome, that helps everyone make progress. So, the story I wanted to tell about this was we now have the largest number of interventions to date. Our scores are the lowest they seem to have been to date, and so it makes sense. You have more students getting intensive intervention. Our TOSAs, our instructional aides, and our admin team are collaborating around this on a daily basis. Our students, like I said, are outperforming the whole group in gains. However, to be clear, very few have gained enough RIT points or RIT score growth to move out of a percentile, right? So again, I might have gone from a 450 to I grew to a 457, but I'm still in the 19th percentile or whatever. So, and very few have moved from a band to a band, right? From the low to the low average or the average, right? Some have jumped a band, but now that we have the winter scores, what are we doing? Cycle of continuous improvement. Some kids have moved out and more kids are moving in, and those students will receive more intervention going forward. So what are our next steps? Spring of 22, here we are. The CASP is coming out 3rd through 8th grade in April. No CASP in 9th grade because we don't take CASP until 11th grade, if you didn't know that. In June, we'll be able to analyze the CASP data versus the fall and winter NWA data. So we'll get in June and start looking at the data. Will help us really determine, like, how are we doing? What do we do next? And help us focus on the fall. And it'll help us launch in the fall. Where do we need more intervention, less intervention? What intervention programs seem to be meeting the mark? How do we set NWEA norms where we say, okay, it used to be the 61st percentile, but it really looks like if you're in the 56th percentile, that rings. So we'll be adjusting based on new data coming forward. So that is the end of my academic report. I know it's a lot of talking. I feel really, strongly that it's important that it's a topic we give its due time. Any thoughts? Any questions? Concerns? What do you notice? What do you wonder? Anything at all? Hope I'll just call. I'm just gonna whip around. You got any thoughts?
Thanks. Honestly, the numbers are better than what I had anticipated. I wonder if including 9th NWEA if it's appropriate given the fact that CASP data will be 3rd through 8th. Like, is there a way
I could do a
to
reanalysis of like 3-8 alone. Yeah, that's worth considering.
right? And then I'm always interested in like in the fall, what percentage of students were new to NWEA altogether?
Yeah.
Because it can be a shocking start, and so those are the pieces that jump out at me. But overall, I'm pleased that it. I mean, yes, there were drops. I can't ignore them.
Lots.
But given everything that students have been through over the last 2 years, I'll take it. I just, and to the teachers, just the amount of dedication it took to essentially sort of looks almost maintain.
In some areas, for sure.
Like,
Some areas.
I mean, especially reading wasn't particularly far off, and math is a struggle, and it's a struggle from year to year and test to test. So.
Anybody else? I shouldn't do a full whip round. Sean, you can pass.
I would agree that the numbers are, that the drops are not as big as I had expected. Drops, they're not as big as I had expected. I wonder how much the fact that reading was better than math has to do with parental comfort in helping with, there's probably a lot of parents
Maybe.
who in general are not as comfortable helping with math.
Maybe.
New math, it's done differently than the way I learned how to do it.
Yeah,
Versus
all
I
national
can read a
trends.
word and I can help you read a word.
Yeah.
So.
All the trends indicate math is more of a challenge for every school than the English language arts. Yeah.
I do remember being done with math in like the 4th grade and being like, okay, go ask your teacher.
Don't listen to her for kids. Math's really cool.
Oh, I love math. I just couldn't help anymore. Right? There just is a point where someone was better trained to explain it than I was. That's all I mean.
And you could pass, McIver. Any thoughts?
So many thoughts. I think part of it is just like this is like I want so much. I want like the 9th grade breakdown. I want
Totally.
new to Westlake. I want those reading math 180 kids. So it's so close. I just want more to guide.
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah, and I think that conversation on data transparency and building systems that it's like, oh, it's there. Oh, look, we run the quarterly report. And it's as much as you want or don't want. And it's not all for throwing it up on these slides, but for the data nerds, like, here it is. It'd be nice to have. Janie, and you can pass.
No, I'm just excited that I'm hoping this is coming up as one of our board goals as well, to keep this academic piece in the forefront and continuing to do that behind the scenes data to really look at where we're at. And I appreciate that you brought it up tonight. I think that I'm just glad we're moving forward, and I appreciate how Westlake is we're just always anticipating what kids are going to need.
Yeah.
And even in where we've been, in this place of just a pause of trying to just deal with everything,
Right.
that we're always out in front and trying to help kids, even before, in the middle of everything. So, I mean, I love that about our school.
Yeah. Josh, and you can pass.
My thought was excluding the new hire, the vice principal at the high school, do the 2 other new hires allow us to remain nimble, have a little more flexibility to keep up with the caseload on the interventions, or even provide more to help keep that going? Does that help provide support to the teachers or create a little bit of flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think having an assistant principal at the high school definitively lightens the load over there and gets more people in the classroom. When you look at Ms. MacGyver, who kind of single-handedly handles all the flex block planning, all the things. Having another person over there would be nice there. Here, having a director back in CNI creates the data that the teacher wants, right? So yeah, having that director of CNI back does offer those supports for staff for sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I will turn it back over to you, Board President Gullick.
Okay. So now, before we take our public comment on the consent item, did board members have any comments on items A through G? Okay, seeing none, John, now if you would please read in the public comment.
Yes. Oh boy, I should have brought my glasses. But I got it. I got this. I usually put it on my big screen when I'm in my office. Okay. Comment for board meeting consent agenda health and safety plan. I'm disappointed that Westlake is not keeping our school mask mandate in place like some other schools in the area, such as those in Sac City Unified School District. For the first time since this pandemic began, Westlake classrooms will not feel like a safe space for my children come Monday. Westlake has demonstrated a cautious wait-and-see approach these last 2 years, for which you are all celebrated. But with mask mandates for K-12 schools ending this week, I wish that Westlake would have waited to see how this goes for other schools before making this change. While students can wear masks if they choose, the fact is that peer pressure will mount and make it difficult for many students to feel comfortable continuing to wear masks as their peers stop wearing them. I have already heard some staff members saying masks will be optional next week instead of reminding students that the guidance is that masks inside at schools are strongly recommended. Keeping all members of our community safe and healthy should always be the highest priority. I know the board and all staff at Westlake are doing the best they can in a tough situation and want to keep everyone safe and healthy. But I strongly disagree with this decision to stop the mask mandate inside classrooms at this time. Sincerely, Carissa Richards Johnson. I will forward this to you for the minutes. And I think that is the only comment, but let me just look back in the inbox and see. Yeah, that is the only comment.
Perfect, thank you. If there aren't any other board comments on the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve items A through G?
I will move approval of items A through G.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Janie. Amy, if you would please take the vote. Yes.
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 That brings us to our action items tonight, which is the first one is accept and approve the second interim budget.
Good evening.
I'm assuming it's you, Steve.
It is.
Yes.
So note to self, check your batteries before you come. I unplugged at 100% and it just nosedive. Would you mind driving from there and I can
I
say
got
from
you.
here?
I got you right,
All right.
here. There you go.
So this slide will probably look very familiar to everyone in this room. This is the budget timelines that nonprofits, including us as a charter school, need to comply with. So the first two, the grayed out, are periods that we've already done already. The board already approved first interim and financial audit a couple months ago. And so tonight we're taking a look at our second interim budget, which needs to get approved by March 15th. So we're right in line with where we need to be. So items in the second interim, again, similar to the first interim as well. We have all of the revenues and expenditures the school would anticipate to have through the end of this year and also for the next 2 years. Includes base revenue, donations that have come in, donations from WAVE as well. So all those pieces and elements are back in the budget now. And then in previous years, we use school services for the majority of our data. We also coordinate with the El Dorado County SELPA. We get information from the Natomas Unified School District. So we get different pieces of data from different sources, and those all get built into the budget. Also, during the second interim period, a little bit of an exciting time. The governor would have come out by then and announced their January budget proposal. So anything that the governor is forecasting to happen in subsequent fiscal years also get built into the budget at this time. So those elements are built in there too, including a COLA and a PERS change we'll talk about in a little bit. So again, those forecasted elements are also included in the out years. So on the revenue side of the house, revenue has been interesting this year. Per ADA, LCFF has gone up. Overall, LCF revenue has gone down, largely because of the change in average daily attendance. But overall, revenue has gone up because we've seen an increase in donations and some other things. So revenue has been a little bit of a roller coaster this year, similar to last year and the year prior to that. But overall, revenue still is looking to be positive this year. Something to look at the budget, if you haven't already, is base. Reflecting back on the March to March, right? So last March, as we were building the budget, we said, hey, it looks like next year might be somewhat normal. So we built the base budget based upon that. This has not been a normal year, right? So we did make an adjustment at first interim, and we had made an adjustment again here at the second interim, particularly because of Omicron and some additional supports we've added into the base budget. So just thought I'd specifically call that piece out. And then future year revenue continues to look good, primarily because of the expansion of a high school continues to grow, and also some COLAs or cost of living adjustments are built into our LCFF funding rates. So we see some good revenue growth here in the out years. On the expenditure side of the house, again, things are largely in line with the adopted and interim budgets. A little bit of good news is that STIRS and PERS rates have continually gone up year after year after year after year. There's seemingly no end in sight. But on the PERS side, they're actually coming down a little bit, which is a nice bit of news. The overall dollar effect of the drop in the PERS rates isn't too significant over the next 2 years at least, about $50,000. But cumulatively, as the years go on, if the rates stay where they're projected to stay, it would, again, add to some cost savings for the school. Second term also includes a number of different elements. So it includes some increases to certificated substitutes. We brought on a number of certificated substitutes on, say, a full-time, using finger quotes, basis, right? So they qualified for benefits. So that's included in the budget. We did a mid-year classified compensation increase. So our classified non-management staff received a mid-year adjustment effective January 1st. Again, that's now in the budget. We have a couple new positions kind of talking about some of the mental health and other supports that we put into place. We have an assistant dean. We have a base specialist. We've got reinvested in some of these positions that were needed. Return of some field lessons. So right, there's like a shining light, right? Here they're coming back. So I know a couple of things have come up to the board already for approval, but we have some overnight field lessons planned for Sierra Outdoor Schools, the overnight 8th grade trip for Santa Cruz. Like these bigger field trips are back on the books, so it's exciting. And then I think every news channel these days is talking about inflation. Everything is going up. Our budget is not immune to that. So, we're seeing some increase in costs as well. This is the old traditional pie chart of how the money is split up, right? So you can see the majority of our revenue comes in from state resources, that being the LCFF in the blue, and the EPA, the Education Protection Account, over in the red. So again, most of our funds come in from the state, and then smaller chunks coming from the Fed and other local resources. On the expenditure side of the house, a little bit smaller on the screen, but if you were add it all up, about 80% goes towards certificate and classified salary and benefits. So the majority of our budget is dedicated to those bigger elements. And the kind of professional services, the, I guess, pinkish color, also looks like a big chunk, and it is. But we, invest heavily in our custodial services. Clean It is here tonight, right? They're working around us as our staff are largely gone for the day. And then also Law and Order. We invest to keep, Jenny mentioned earlier, how nice the campus looks. We invest to make sure that happens. And actually, I'd add real quickly that tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, if you want to see 2 big dump trucks, they're going to come in and dump approximately 100 yards of bark because the campus is going to get, the interior parts are going to get rebarked over the weekend. So, again, goes to some of that investment piece, right? So there's a reason that that piece of the pie at least is a little bit bigger. Overall, though, the budgets continue to look very, very healthy. So with that, I would be glad to take any questions or would seek approval.
Sean, do you want to say anything as, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as chair of finance, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
I know, I like to share the wealth.
And no, Steve always covers things really well, so I don't think I have anything to add.
Were there any other board questions? And if not, is there a motion to approve the second interim?
I'll move.
Thanks, Josh. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sean. Yes.
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 Nice work, Mr. Corbin. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm looking up something for the next item, so just a second. Sorry.
Are you looking up the Brown Act?
No, I know we're
Please.
fine on Brown Act. Right. Steve, are you aware of any restriction we have in terms of like a 4/5 vote for
'Cause we have-
compensation or no, right? So I think simple majority works. So even though we
Okay.
have 3 absent, it's 3 of those here. Like if it
Yeah,
was
it's present.
because if it was
Got
a
it.
mandatory pass requirement
Yeah.
and it's a 4/5 requirement,
Right.
if one person's absent, all 4 have to
Copy.
pass. But
Copy.
we don't have that for this. So I do think we can proceed on the next item.
We're having a sidebar conversation because 2 of our board members will have to abstain from this vote because they have conflict. So Hope and I have this conversation that there are 3 non-staff board members, but there 3 of 5 makes a majority. You could vote. However, if you took into consideration the 3 who are not here, are they 3 of 6? And that's not 51%. But you're right. You're right. The current simple majority of the people present would count for the vote.
Oh, it doesn't.
Just kidding about that. Strike that from the YouTube.
Well, no. So just can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just need to think out loud for a second.
Yeah.
Because they're not no's, they're abstains, which is same to an absence. So it's 305 in this case.
303.
I don't know that do 3 of 3. That's not even a majority of the board.
The reality is we can table this because it's not critical. It's awesome. We're excited about it, but it's not going to get have an actual impact until a month from now anyway. So it's okay if if we're not comfortable moving on it, it's okay.
I have concerns of 3 of 8 or 3 of 6. Right, moving forward on
Because
something.
there's 8
like
board
this.
members, 2 have to abstain,
And all
takes
3
you
of
down to
us,
6.
actually, I'm even more so.
You're all on finance.
We're all
Finance.
finance.
You're all on
So
finance
that
committee.
answers that.
Yeah.
So this needs to be
Yeah,
tabled.
yeah, you're all on finance committee. You've approved it out of finance committee. You've sent it here to yourselves. Let's just wait a month, and it'll be exciting when we do it.
That just hit me, but yes.
Yeah,
it-
I
you
didn't
can't.
think about the finance implication.
It
Okay,
just-
good.
I'm like looking around like, oh wait, no, these people both know.
These
this.
people all voted on it already. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
And it was unanimous in finance.
Yeah,
So
but
let's
look
see
at
how
that.
this turns out.
We're not having a finance meeting this month, but yet we're still bringing something to the board next month.
There you go.
We're
Well
that
done.
good.
You guys are hard workers.
Wow. I'm glad we see. I just need to think out loud. That's I just.
I apologize. I was
needed time.
texting during during your presentation. I'm like, are we voting? Is it 3 of 6 or is it 3 of 5?
And he's
Yeah.
like 3 of 6. It's like, who is the 6th person that's not here? Like, and then it took me a second. It's like with my husband and I. Is it in? Is it out? Is it up or is it down?
Left, right.
It's
Okay,
the
well,
opposite of whatever he says.
do we have to table that officially or?
Yes, that's tabled. We'll bring it back. So, Amy, that's a future agenda item. Sorry, Steve, you don't get to present on that tonight.
I was looking forward to it. It's all good stuff.
No, it's amazingly good stuff. But now we'll get to
100%.
see your face next month because your
This is
computer
true.
will be charged. Um, I had to. I couldn't. I just had to. Goals and succession planning. Again, it feels like we're awfully small, and we want to recap what we discussed in governance maybe more thoroughly. I'm not sure how you would recommend us proceeding on this particular topic.
Well, on this topic, we have board goals for a conversation. We have the executive director goals for a conversation. The board, I think, has done a good job at the strategic plan workshop last month, or was it the month before? Where we talked about what is important to the board, and I certainly heard loud and clear that reconnecting our community is a big deal. I spoke to that this evening regarding my intent to make sure that the new leadership that we bring on board is real clear about what their charge is to reconnect our community on campus and off campus as well. So I think I like that as an executive director goal as we start to craft my goals for next year, really bringing that piece around. I also acknowledged in governance in anticipation of tonight's academic presentation that, I think it's important that potentially the executive director goal also includes something around systems development, around academic and social emotional. We already have great areas inside of our strat plan that we haven't really addressed since January of 2020. So I think that's appropriate for the executive director goal as well. And I think when you talk about the executive director goal, I think one of the biggest things I'm going to do this year that I hope you would ask me to do is to really onboard these new leadership roles really well. I mean, what Emily Batten, Christina Ike, Jen Kayau collectively have been here for over 30 years, right? That's a strong, and you throw me in the mix, that it brings us almost to 40 years as an admin team. So, we want these next leaders to also be here a decade from now. So when I look at my goal piece, I think those three areas are really critical. We talked in governance then about, well, what about board goals? What's the board working on? And we thought back to when we used to work with Board on Track, and really we were pouring deeply into this board and our own development. What does it mean to be a board member? How do we function as board members? How do we grow as board members? We've done book reads in finance in the past. So maybe there's something around that, is around board development, board expansion, and board succession. So we think that there's maybe a package there. What is the difference between succession and expansion per governance conversation? It was like, if Hope steps off, that's a succession. An expansion would be like, we have 8 members now. We could go back up to 9. For whatever reason, you could go to 10. So to get from here to there in that conversation, we talked about all the possible steps that you might take through board workshopping with our community, inviting more people to be on committees, things like that. So I think that kind of sums up what we talked about in governance.
The only other piece, John, I think I'd add is we did talk a bit about forming potentially another committee as a way to present another topic that might interest members of our community in participating. Academic oversight is one that's often mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if we went down an academic path, but made it something a little bit more Westlake, where it doesn't sound like oversight for some reason. I feel like it gives more of an impression of what the committee could actually do than does. Yeah. If that makes sense, because they're not really overseeing per se. But that's another topic, and something that maybe not for tonight, but I'd ask board members to think about is there a committee or a topic you think that this board could use assistance with, right? Because committees are meant to aid the board's work, aid administration. We don't need to create one just to create one. But maybe as we go back and we try to come back from COVID, is there a committee in particular that would be really useful in terms of the board's work?
So if you think about board development, board expansion, and board succession, what comes to mind for you under this discussion topic? What board development, expansion, succession conversations, or even like in the era of no bad ideas, I'll pitch one because Mrs. Hughes doesn't know, I was like, hey, what if we had like a half-day board workshop that allowed us to mingle a little bit, get some development a little bit, but also like we haven't been around each other in a long time. And what if that half-day board workshop was for board and committee members? Because you might sit on this committee and not know the person who sits on that committee. But in conjunction with that, we're like, how would we invite more people into that room? We say, well, what if WAVE has a board and they need to learn to be a better board, and we're a board and we need to learn how to be a better board? What if you like had a combine where like now you've got the WAVE board and their committee members and our committee members, maybe you end up with 25 people in a room doing a half-day workshop, and boy, that would just help us expand, because you'd start to look around the room and go, oh, this person would be great for this committee, and that person could help over there. So in the era of no bad ideas, in the area of succession, expansion, and development, what do you notice? What do you wonder? What comes to mind for you? And you can pass, but first person to go wins nothing.
I'll take nothing.
Yeah, you
Okay.
win. You win nothing.
I think I really, really like the idea of like focusing on committees. If that's another committee that is engaging, it's that inviting committee members to a board workshop. I think that they are the pipeline to the board,
Yeah.
right? When I think about how are we recruiting board members? Committees are great stepping stones. And I think this has come up, this is not an original idea, but just training us also about how do we talk about the board? What are we looking for when we are saying, hey, who might be a fit here? Who wants to join a committee? How do we talk about that in our community so that we're looking at who is a member of the board, whose voice is heard on the board, who are we reaching out to be a part of this?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the importance of the board as a pipeline, but also how we function as board members and talk as board members and recruit. Love it. Janie, what do you notice? What do you wonder or pass?
I love the idea of us getting all together so we get to know each other. I keep thinking of a board mixer, which sounds like the wrong kind
Yeah,
of,
no.
like it's not really learning, but I mean, just so we're getting to see each other and getting to know each other with the committee members. Also, like the idea, I think Hope was just talking about, the academic committee, possibly starting a new committee.
Yeah.
Out of maybe something we need, post-COVID, and looking at, what we've learned, where we're going
Yeah.
moving forward. So I liked all of that. And my computer's about to die as well.
Ah,
So I'm gonna go plug it in and just
just
since I
yeah.
had the microphone right now, I was gonna say that. Sorry.
Very good. Note to self: we need better batteries. Got it. Josh, anything you think about board development, succession, expansion? Any of that?
I think we should start thinking about starting a foundation. As money are coming in, fundraising, one of the things that was discussed, I mean, even just take down to a micro level from a grant standpoint. School can apply for a grant, foundation can apply for a grant. And I know that there are other benefits to doing that, and I think we may want to start, taking a look at that, seeing what the pros and cons are, and if that's something as we continue to grow and put more focus on, raising funds for experiences for the kids and things like that, how do we do that? What are
Yeah.
the pros and cons? And I think that's something we should look into.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, not the same as a committee, but another committee type structure that. Yeah, I love that. Sean.
I'm gonna pass.
Pass is good.
because I think I participated in governance,
Yeah.
and I don't think I have anything else to say.
Hope.
You have to go again?
No, but just saying your name.
I'm
just
just teasing.
practicing.
No, I just agree with Lila. Committees are our pipeline, and I mean, I've said it a couple times tonight already, but I really think doing something at International Festival could be really useful, where people can hopefully maybe see our whole faces and connect with us, and we can share what. I mean, I'm a big proponent on sharing our whys, like why we do this work. We're all volunteering our time, and we're doing it for hopefully I know we're doing it all for good reasons, but in a way we can share. And so getting out and meeting people and having the opportunity to share and talk about that, I think would be really helpful.
It's very good. Anyone else have anything else to add to the topic before we close the topic?
Yeah.
Lila?
I think I'm just thinking right now as a staff representative, I'm curious about like the role of staff also, engaging staff and communicating what the
Yeah.
board does to staff also. If we are looking at who's part of our community, we know that it's our staff that knows our community best. And if they are familiar with what the board is, I guess I'm just curious, about talking with the staff and
Yeah.
thinking about, are they thinking about potential board members that they know here as part of our Westlake community, and they're like, oh, hey, do you know what the board is? Have you checked out a board meeting? And is that a potential to, maybe do a little bit of education with our staff members too, or inviting also.
Yeah, that's a great pipeline conversation because you're right. Our staff are connected to our community. You're like, hey, we're looking for a grant writer. Oh, I know a grant writer. My gosh, Mr. So-and-so's. Yeah, that's a great call out. Any other additions to the conversation? Timeline-wise, right, I mean, this whole last 2 years has been a little wackadoo. Where are we at on publishing goals? I mean, I feel like on the executive director goals, it's totally appropriate for us to kind of end the year in June and be like, okay, here's the marching orders for next year. I feel like that's an okay timeline for the ED.
I think it makes sense for the board too,
Okay.
because June is our annual meeting. It's when we would appoint or make other decisions.
Officers and
When we
stuff, yeah.
when we review the bylaws, when we approve the budget. Right? Is that yes? I had brain. The
Yes.
slide was up there. I know I've
It's
seen it.
there,
My
it's there.
brain is like, you've been out of the house all day. I don't know what's up with you. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Good.
Which gives us 2 meetings. Yeah, it's an ongoing topic. Yeah. So we'll bypass closed session for a moment. Are there any other future agenda items that board members would like to see in April?
We've already recorded that compensation's coming back.
Right, we've already noted compensation, and then that we'll continue discussing goals and sort of begin our planning into our lead up to our annual meeting. Okay, then reflection.
What made this meeting work for you, and what would make this meeting work better if something had changed? First person to go, other than Lila, wins what she won before, which is nothing.
I'll go.
Janie, what worked for you, or what would have been better?
I loved being here. It worked for me to do that. But I love seeing Amber just get up and talk about all the things that are going to be happening. The international, like all the things that we're going to be doing to get our community connected again. I love that is a universal goal, really, for what we're all doing. The board, the school, the teachers, everything, and so I love that. What did not work was my Chromebook dying.
Yes.
And I need to make sure that I had it plugged in, and then it.
We'll get some power strips out here the next
Yeah,
couple meetings. We'll get
so.
that figured out.
Other than that, that's.
Excellent. Lila, you want to whip your way?
Yeah, sure. What worked, I'm so happy to be in person. It just took me a little bit of time to get warmed up. I feel like as we're coming back in person, it's like there's still
Yeah.
situations that are awkward for me. I'm like, I got the hang of this, so just getting better at it as we go is going to work.
Very good. Sean, what worked, or would have worked better?
I liked when we did, there was one point at which we did a whip around and it was okay to pass, but nobody did, which was great. And
Yeah.
then we did another whip around and it was okay to pass, and I did, and that was also okay.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything for what would have worked better.
I like the whip around structure, and I like the fact that I love when this board engages, man. It's a great board. Hope?
It's hard for me to know where to look. Like I know I'll get
Totally.
used to it, but I feel like I'm really big here, but then I want to look there, and then it's like up my nose. I mean, luckily I'm glad I have a mask on because it would be really awkward if we didn't have masks. I think with the view, but I just like being here, and it's just I feel like I have to build my steam back. Like I want to acknowledge, like as our community is going through all this, and to go with Mrs. Johnson's comment, right? Like this is a scary time, and remembering that as many people who want to ditch the mask, there are as many who want to keep it. I have a real life example of a school that has dropped masks already, and 50% of the kids are still wearing them, and there's not peer pressure to drop them. So I'm optimistic that we've built an environment here that's strong enough to support students in whatever choice people make. And so I leave here tonight just really optimistic that we've come together, and that we're working together to move forward in a collaborative and safe way.
I think on my reflection, what would work better I guess every time I look this way, not seeing my profile would be better. 'Cause I'm like, oh, is that how I look from the side? No, my what would have worked better is I think I really hope that the next time we have the conversation around discussing goals and succession planning, that I've done a little more of my homework and maybe hoping I can collaborate and bring, some real tangible, wordsmithable goals. And because I have in my mind some goals that I'm starting to gel around, but I think me preparing them and having them in the packet for you would lead a better conversation. So I think that's something I could do better for subsequent meetings. Josh?
I like the new setup. I know it wasn't easy, but I like the addition, the microphones.
Yeah.
We've come out of this. I think that we talk about re-engaging with the community. We've, through COVID, learned how to make our board meetings more accessible to the community. And this just, kind of continues to carry that momentum. And I know it wasn't easy to set all that up, but I really like the direction we're heading with that. I think it makes us more accessible, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this little setup here. Big shout out to Jessica Block, our tech toast. Literally, she made it happen, and I was told by a few people, I don't know you could do that. And I'm like, I think Jessica can, and she did. So it's very exciting. I'm glad that we're on YouTube tonight and live in person with a live studio audience. So this is phenomenal.
John, can you do just one more check for public comment?
Yeah.
Please.
Seeing none.
Perfect. So with that, then we will go ahead and adjourn into closed session. We don't anticipate a report out. So we will go ahead and drop off the YouTube and see everybody next month.
All right. Bye on YouTubes. We'll close out the Google Meet as well. Okay. There goes